Thanks for coming along, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. This is going to be a kind of introduction, like an overview, to kind of get you thinking about the issues that we're going to kind of be discussing today, and just to get you thinking on that. So there's going to be a couple of themes in it. So my name's Fudge, so I work as a lecturer here on the campus. I work with the Energy Policy Group, which is led by Catherine Mitchell, so that's down in the Geography Department. And what we do in the Energy Policy Group basically is we look at how we're going to shift to a low carbon society from the unsustainable system we've got now. So how can we have a more sustainable system with cleaner, more affordable energy? So that's what we mainly do on the campus. As Alex rightly said, it's a complex issue, so you need to use interdisciplinarity to look at these kind of issues. So it's very much set up to kind of with an interdisciplinary focus. We've got PhD students on board and postdocs as well. And what we do kind of through outputs, we have publications, we feedback on government reports, obviously books, journal articles and policy responses, and try and get the word out really. And Catherine's very passionate about energy moving from our unsustainable system now. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in the group to kind of get things, which I kind of get from the amount of people here, that there's a lot of enthusiasm. So one of the things I want to talk about here is about the vision. For me, community energy is obviously not one kind of straitjacket concept. There's lots of different elements to that. There's lots of different visions. But overall, it's kind of looking at how we can kind of get a form of governance emerging from the local level and decision making at the local level to kind of change the system we've got in place at the moment, which is patently not delivering what should be delivering. So the theme of governance is going to form the base of what I'm going to talk about. So if we think more widely, governance of energy, national governance is stretched by the energy conundrum, and it has to reach up into the world stage and down into the local grassroots level, households and individuals and communities. So governance is about decision making rather than government and top-down policy making, and energy particularly exemplifies that. Climate change is a global issue which affects everyone. Energy is expended at a place-based level, so you have to develop policies that resonate at an individual level and a place-based level. Again, energy security. Most of the UK's energy is imported, so it's no longer a national concern, it's an international concern. So governance has to be about reaching up into the international stage in order to ensure energy security for our nation. And likewise, energy affordability. The post-war consensus was based around the idea of the public good that cheap fuel for all and access to energy, and that's kind of come into tangent at the moment with rising fuel prices. So it's about governing complexity, I would say, sustainability in particular, but if you look at these areas, agriculture, as well as energy, water, healthcare, transport, ageing, they're all kind of issues that mean we can't have the traditional way of doing things. Top-down policies no longer fit. We have to have a wider range of mechanisms through which to implement effective policies. And if you think about energy policy, there are multiple actors involved, multiple issues involved. It's a complex system, so you have to have a more innovative form of governance in order to enact policy that it's going to be effective. So if you think about the idea of complexity, it means we need new ways of looking at things as policy is constantly evolving to take account of different issues that arise. And I think this is quite a good slide because it exemplifies the challenge facing the UK government. We have to reduce our carbon emissions by 80% by 2050 according to 1990 levels. So if you look at the left hand of this, these are the kind of sectors and the issues that had to reduce their energy, we had to get from the top there down to there. That's quite a shift, quite a radical shift. And another way of looking at this is to kind of look at the electricity system. So you look at where we are currently, we're in a very centralised system, very much fossil fuel based, transmission dependent, remote from point of use and passive consumption, so people not necessarily aware of the consequences of energy use, although I'm sure these price rises are going to make people become aware. So if we're going to look to a low carbon economy, this is kind of an ideal type. So it may be smaller scale, decentralised. It may be more based upon renewable energy, more energy efficiency, active distribution. It may be local. So they're very different systems. So if you think about where we are currently and where we want to be, there are maybe a lot of hard choices to make along the way. So current tensions around energy at the moment and different visions of what people want to see. So are we going to have, in this low carbon society, is it still going to be based around consumption as the current system is and economic growth? Or are we going to think about reducing our energy use more clearly? Equity and affordability, I saw a report yesterday that suggests that due to rising prices that as many as 3 people in 10 could be at risk of not being able to afford to heat their homes. So this idea of the public good, who is the guarantor of the public good? Energy and environment as a public good. Who's going to ensure these things take place? Very much up for grabs at the moment. The role of technology. In a low carbon society, what is going to be the role of technology? What will be the scale? What technology type will we go with? What will be the role of behaviour? What will be the interface between behaviour change and technology? You may think it's a technological fix, I imagine many of you don't. There'll be a strong element of behaviour change, which isn't always popular with the electorate. So I would argue that community visions around energy suggest, particularly over the last few decades, that there's an emerging form of governance coming around at the local level around these issues, because policymakers at the top and government are not necessarily addressing these issues or can't address these issues because of structural issues. There seems to be a growing consensus that people are taking things in their own hands and trying to develop a more grassroots approach to policy making, doing things themselves. The government have actually recognised this, certainly in the low carbon transition plan, and the community consultation with the government, which I believe is due to be released in a couple of weeks. Government do seem to be aware that there is a growing kind of grassroots consensus and that community centred energy can provide an answer, although whether they actually going to go with that, no one really knows. It's been both a formal and a non-formal approach. There's been local authorities obviously taking a lot of headway, places such as Wakefield, also Cornwall, Oxford City Council, Kirklees, Birmingham, kind of taking the lead and doing things with their communities or on their own. And I would argue that one of the benefits of more community-driven ideas around energy is it can encourage the development of niches, and these can be political, people developing decision-making fora within their community. It can be economic, you can develop a kind of service economy at a more local level, or at a technological level. Niches can be a good incubator for technologies. So, what are the benefits of a more community-based form of energy governance? Well, I would argue particularly it holds the potential to be more inclusive. So, people more included in the decision making, actually making their own decision making, becoming empowered around energy issues such as energy and environment. It's also, I would argue, a space in which ideas and creativity can emerge in a more grassroots way than top-down decision making will allow. So it can allow communities to kind of become empowered and make more of their own decisions around these complex issues that are not necessarily being addressed by top-down governance. It can also be a catalyst for developing greater community resilience, also bringing people together, sharing ideas and creating that kind of sense of community. And also importantly, educating and allowing them to make more informed choices, particularly over energy and environmental issues. A more decentralised, more community-led energy system can also allow more balance between energy supply and consumption, a more decentralised system rather than the kind of the waste system we've got here now. Obviously, this is kind of more developed in places such as Denmark and Germany, but certainly in the UK over the last 2 decades, signs that this is happening here now. Also, more of an emphasis towards demand reduction, which is not always prioritised by policymakers. Again, not always popular, reducing your energy demand. So if you kind of, a more grassroots approach, more community-led approach may kind of encourage less use of energy, because obviously the overall aim of low carbon economy surely is to reduce your overall energy use, as well as to use it in different ways. And in this way, energy could possibly be more aligned to the needs in communities rather than this huge centralised system we've got now. The potential for organising different forms of ownership at the local level, different kind of economic models such as cooperatives. So I'm going to finish on this slide. So who's going to make this change happen? And getting back to this idea of vision. So is it going to be government? Is it going to be big business? Are wealthy benefactors going to come along and do the job? Is it going to be a secret millionaire? Or does part of this involve visioning and ownership of a future reality that comes from our own communities? Thank you for listening.